Good afternoon, brothers and sisters.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
Good.
I'm so happy to have been invited to be your keynote speaker for the 47th Africana Studies Week. I think this is an interesting time that we live in. We are getting ready to see some cultural reality in action less than a week from today. And while we talk about conflict and politics as cultural reality, I want you to ponder a question. The question is, what happened to post-racial America after Barack Obama was elected? I just want you to ponder that question, because as budding scholars, I'm sure you'll ask me to bring it full circle, okay? One of the things that you guys will be asked to do as you evolve as scholars, as artists, as contributors to the larger society, you'll be asked to construct your own views of the world and have to resist conforming to the dominant culture's view of the world. The dominant culture would have you believe that we live in a post-racial society. Now, part of scholarship is inventing your own theories and being able to sustain those theories in the context of societal reality. So whoever came up with post-racial, just because they were sleeping and we caught them sleeping in 2008, their theory is not holding up. This was a different type of environment. I tell you exactly what that was. So this particular theory was nonsense. They had to have an explanation for what had happened, because they never, ever, ever, ever intended for that to happen. Thank you, brother. They didn't intend for that to happen. How many of you truly believe that Barack Obama was elected president on purpose? I'm just curious. Okay, so you think that intentionally happened? You really do? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, as we say in the neighborhood, you don't know what you don't know, right? In fact, 7 things had to happen in order for Barack Obama to be elected president. The stars had to align. All of you in here, sitting in this room, had a better chance of hitting the lottery, all on the same day, that Barack Obama had been elected president of the United States. I used to give my students the opportunity for automatic A when we discussed the presidency. If anybody could find a president that was not a white male, even though the Constitution says you got to be 35 years old, you got to be a natural born citizen, which means either you or your parents were born in the United States. That was the crux of the birther controversy, by saying he wasn't qualified to be president. I'll get back to that in a minute. And you have to have a 14-year residency. That 14-year residency basically came in place at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. Okay? In the Constitutional Convention of 1787, this whole notion of a national executive was resisted because, remember, they were just 11 years out of a monarchy, so they really wasn't fast on that. Their biggest fear for the first 100 years that Britain would come back and reclaim its colonies, and they attempted to do that in the War of 1812. Okay, they came back to try to reclaim their colonies, burned down the White House, okay? But that 14-year residency ensured that at the time the Constitution was ratified in 1790, that anyone who wasn't here prior to the start of the Revolutionary War would not be allowed to come from England, claim citizenship, and then run for president and return the colonies to the monarchy. That's where the 14-year residency comes from. It also ensures that there is no king in waiting, that someone has to be here and present and go through the political processes. And so my students, they used to put great work into this. They'd come back with papers this thick talking about Abraham Lincoln was half black. You know, be like, show me where they would back that up. You know, and of course, they researched the campaign literature that they used against Lincoln, calling him Abraham Africanus, trying to say because he was anti-slavery that he was partially black. And his mother had some Moorish lineage that they couldn't verify, because if they had been able to verify it, they never, ever, ever, ever would have elected Lincoln president. Now, before we get into Barack Obama, I just got a real quick question. How many of y'all believe Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves? I just want to see that too. Because you know they still teach that in U.S. history. Come on, stop lying. So none of y'all in here believe that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Okay, then how did slaves get free? Huh? No. Huh? That's right. White folk fell out. Slavery was set up for 500 years. Okay? You're still supposed to be in slavery. Slavery was set up to last until 2119. Lincoln did not free the slaves. Lincoln was not against slavery. What Lincoln was against was the expansion of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was a war tactic that he used at the time that the Union was losing the war. And it wasn't until he allowed blacks to fight that the war turned around. And it only freed less than 25%. There were 4 million African Americans enslaved in that period. Okay? But if he had freed all the slaves, then he would have lost Kentucky, he would have lost Maryland, he would have lost the border states. So he couldn't have freed the slaves. Okay? And then, even after he issued the proclamation, 75% of the slaves stayed with their masters on the promise that in the new country they set up, they would be free, when they knew, most of them knew that wasn't true. Okay? Now, so you have this context, because Barack Obama essentially based his presidency on the presidency of Lincoln. Okay? Slaves weren't freed because Lincoln gave his life to save the Union. And he had initiated a process to abolish slavery before he was killed. And he was killed over slavery. John Wilkes Booth killed Lincoln over freeing the slaves. And so, in memorial to the fallen president, Congress signed into law the 13th Amendment. Almost the same way that Johnson got Congress to sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the aftermath of the Kennedy assassination. See, your oppressor don't do nothing on their own. There has to be some guilt involved. Okay? And so Barack Obama, when he ran for president, nobody ever thought that they would see this. And then even then they were saying, well, you know, he's a new face. He'd be the perfect candidate for 2016. We have a coronation about to take place. Hillary Clinton is going to be our next president. This is in 2008. And so, what happens? Hillary, as the Democratic Party frontrunner, implodes because people forgot that while Black America and everybody else loved Bill Clinton, they didn't like his wife. She made a lot of enemies in the 8 years that she was in the White House. You know, they had this good cop, bad cop routine. Bill Clinton was the good cop, Hillary Clinton was the bad cop. So there were people waiting on her. Okay? Even today, she has the highest negatives of any person who has ever received the nomination of their party. And after all of the stuff that Donald Trump has said about everybody, women, blacks, Muslims, Latinos, immigrants, he's still even. That's because his negatives is less than hers. You guys could look up next week, this time next week, and Donald Trump could be your president-elect. Now, this time next week, when that happens, you say, yeah, that crazy ass Samad did say that. Because in the same way that they never saw Barack Obama, they didn't see this. And all of this is Obama backlash. All of this is Obama backlash. So Hillary imploded. Then the second front runner, John Everett, he was the star of the presidential election in 2004. He ran second to Kerry. They loved him. Then he turned around and had an affair with a campaign worker, impregnated her while his wife was dying of cancer. Yeah, they got a chair waiting on him in hell with his name on it. Okay? So then suddenly, who else is there to choose from? Now, the reason that Barack Obama came to the attention of the American public was because of the second reason that had to happen. That was anti-intellectualism fatigue. Anybody in here know what anti-intellectualism is?
Wouldn't that be like stupidity or ignorance?
That's correct. That's the promotion of stupidity and ignorance. How many of you guys know people who are so ignorant, and don't confuse ignorant with stupidity? Ignorant just means you don't know. Stupid means you know and you proceed anyway. How many of y'all know people who are so stupid that they make your head hurt? That you can't even talk to them. You just got to give up and walk away. Okay? Well, that's what had happened to America by 2008. They had had so much of George W. Bush that by the end of his term, people was taking their shoes off and throwing it at him. Y'all remember that? He was ducking. People so frustrated to sit there and listen to that nonsense. They just took their shoe off and started throwing it at him. And that was a result of the contested election in 2000, where they said Al Gore was too much of a know-it-all and that George W. Bush would be the guy you would like to have a beer with. Remember? That was their spin. He's the guy that I would like to sit down and have a beer with. Well, everybody, you shouldn't drink with everybody. Okay? And so what we ended up with was an anti-intellectual who knew nothing about government. He was the prophetic puppet presidency because Cheney and the rest of them ran him. And the American people said that won't happen again. They said the next time around, we're going to listen to everybody, even the black guy. And when they started listening to everybody, the black guy made more sense than everybody else. Had there not been a George W. Bush, there wouldn't have been a Barack Obama, because they would have dismissed his candidacy. The third thing that happened, where he couldn't have possibly gotten elected, was without the internet and social media. He demonstrated a mastery of the internet and social media. Remember, he made his announcement over the internet, and everybody followed. And then they couldn't figure out who this cat was, so they went online and started researching him. And they went to MySpace and found out he had 2 million followers. And then they went to Facebook, and Facebook was brand new. he had 3 million followers. Then it went to Twitter, and Twitter was brand new. He had 700,000 followers on Twitter, when most people didn't even have a Twitter account. And then they went to YouTube and looked at the Obama Girl video. How many of y'all ever saw the Obama Girl video? Had 25 million views. They said, shit, this cat is a rock star. They knew they had a problem. And every time Hillary would jab him, he would hit you guys on social media. Oh, Hillary messing with me again, send me $3. Barack Obama in 2008 raised $750 million online. Wow. The most in the history of American politics. In 2012, he raised $1.2 billion. And so what happens then is he's able to buy out television. He's able to pay will.i.am to make him a theme song. He was making music videos. He was buying out the Super Bowl commercials on the Super Bowl. That was significant. Because historically, there's always a gatekeeper that keeps certain people out of politics. And they couldn't do that. The fourth thing that happened is the Republicans put up the weakest opposition that had ever had in recent memory of the Republican Party. John McCain's own party, his own party didn't like it. He was called a maverick in his own party. And he had run out of money in his campaign. He was flying commercial. Okay? But then the Republican Party's front runners imploded. Picture shows up of Mike Huckabee posing with the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. Remember that? Okay. Romney at that time, they wasn't quite ready for the Mormon thing, so they hit him over the head with his religion. See, but 4 years later, they was embracing Romney. They said, well, okay, we got to do something about this black man, so we'll take a Mormon. Okay? So who they end up with is John McCain, who at that time was 71 years old, the oldest party nominee ever, walking around like somebody's grandfather, bumbling and stumbling. They asked him how many houses he had. He said, I don't know how many houses he had. Barack Obama knew how many houses he had. He had 7. Okay? And then he reinforced the lack of confidence people had in him when he made his 5th move. The 5th reason why Barack Obama became president was his selection of Sarah Palin as his vice presidential choice. Now that was a gimmick. They sought to capitalize on women's frustration with Barack Obama not choosing Hillary Clinton as his vice presidential candidate, his running mate. He chose Biden instead, because at that time he didn't trust Hillary. He would have needed a food taster every day if he had appointed Hillary his vice president. That's how bad she wants the presidency. Okay? And from the time you saw Sarah Palin on 60 Minutes with that interview with Katie Couric, the one that Tina Fey took and ran with and brought Saturday Night Live back with her imitation of Sarah Palin, where she purportedly said, I can see Russia from my house. Okay? And Katie Couric was sitting there holding her head like that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. Okay? But what it did, it incensed women. Women say, yeah, we want a president. We want a vice president. We're going to get one day, soon. But you must think we stupid. Okay? Because really, what it reminded them of was the anti-intellectualism that they had just experienced. John McCain had already had 2 heart procedures, and she a heartbeat away from the presidency. That's a problem. The 6th thing that happened that no one saw coming was the housing bubble burst. The economy collapsed in the middle of a presidential election in September of 2008. Stock market took the biggest drop since the market crash of 29. And both presidential candidates was forced to address in a debate what they would do to save the economy. And again, Barack Obama ran circles around McCain. McCain walking all in front of the camera, bumbling. White folks said racism a little too expensive because they lost a significant portion of their wealth when the housing market crashed. And then the last thing that nobody could have ever foreseen, the seventh thing, you couldn't have even predicted this. With all that was going on the day before election, Barack Obama was only 3 points ahead of John McCain the night before election. Then election day came, and a phenomenon occurred that had never occurred in the history of America. Y'all wanna know what that is? Yeah. Promise not to tell nobody? Okay, lean closer, lean in. Y'all showed up.
Yes.
35 million first-time voters came out of nowhere. They had never seen that ever in any presidential election. Barack hit y'all on y'all's hip, and y'all said, "Mom, where do we vote?" Most of y'all didn't even know y'all was registered to vote. Didn't know when you signed up for your driver's license, there's a motor voter check box. Many states had register and vote the day of election. Yep, it was y'all's fault.
You're welcome.
You know how it was y'all's fault? Y'all saved the nation. Because the rest of the world was getting ready to move on the United States. China, Russia, Iran was getting ready to move on the United States. The election of Barack Obama bought them 8 years. And with Trump talking the stuff that he's talking, they be like, okay, yeah, bring it. Russia is to Canada. Russia is to China what Canada is to us, our most common border. They're gonna get their nuclear weapons from Russia. Okay? This is how you know it was y'all. Barack Obama wasn't seen as a politician. He was a personality. He was a celebrity. You guys were the ones that created the chants. You were the ones that put up the psychedelic posters. Okay? When he wasn't on the ballot in 2010, what happened? The Democrats lost the House by the most number of seats ever. They lost 82 seats. And then in 2012, they were saying, well, you know, Barack Obama is passé. Young people ain't into Barack Obama anymore. Barack said, shit. What happened? Landslide. Not even Mitt Romney saw that coming. He didn't even write a concession speech because his people was like, ain't no way this cat gonna beat us. Y'all showed up. And then in 2014, when he wasn't on the ballot, and y'all didn't go to the polls, what happened? Democrats lost the Senate. Okay? Now, fool around and don't show up next week. Because, you know, I got a lot of students. Hillary came to East Los Angeles College earlier this year. And most of the students in my class, you know, they were talking Bernie or bust. Was they talking that on this campus too?
Just time.
Bernie or bust. So they had this huge auditorium. Hillary comes. They wouldn't let none of the Bernie supporters in. So about 15 of my students, they put on Hillary shirts. And then she was only there 15 minutes. And then she started taking questions and answers. And they let one of my students get to the mic. And they walked up there with that Hillary shirt. And they said, Hillary damn near ran out of there. Okay? I know it's a conflict for you to vote for Hillary. I told the president that last week when I saw him. You know, because I was the first one to bring him to Los Angeles in a public space in 2006 when nobody was with him. The only two people that was with him was Karen Bass, who is now a congresswoman. She was speaker at that time. And Kamala Harris, who was San Francisco DA at that time. She's now Attorney General running for the Senate. And he was asking his coalition here in the state, why are we not enthusiastic about Hillary Clinton? What he was really asking is why we hadn't written her any checks. I said, well, Hillary will get my vote, but she ain't getting none of my money. Okay, because that's a conflict for me. Because you guys know she's not a progressive. How do you go from the energy you created for Barack Obama over the person that tried to destroy you? Because Donald Trump was right. Hillary did start that birther stuff. They just leaked it out there, and then after he was elected, Trump took it and raised the profile. But it did come out of the Hillary camp. It didn't come directly from Hillary, but it came out of Hillary camp. They tried to destroy him. Implied the possibility of assassination. Remember that when she refused to get out of the primary after it was obvious that he had enough delegates to secure the nomination? And folk remember that. And folk remember that her husband literally built the prison industrial complex. Okay? And folk remember high unemployment during the Clinton years. Yeah, everybody else went back to work except the people who are historically out of work. The only reason that she even dealt with the issue of income inequality or the issue of immigration is because Bernie forced her to take it on. And so those 7 things had to occur in order for us to have a president that was not a white male. And so the conflicts that we see in 2016 are a manifestation of what came out of 2008. Now, the question that I asked you at the beginning of the lecture, what happened to post-raciality in America? That we were supposed to be over racism. We've seen some things in the Trump campaign that we haven't seen in the United States since the 1960s. You talking about my students taking a Hillary shirt and going, or them boys in the South, them boys in the Midwest, them boys in Texas, and Arizona and Nevada, and parts of California have taken that shirt off and now we see what they really think. You as young people have to be able to frame this in proper context. Hillary Clinton might be known as a bridge. Now, I'm an independent. I'm not advocating for you to vote for anybody. I'm just telling you, you know, sometimes you do have to take the lesser of the two evils. Sometimes you do have to hold your nose. How many of y'all went to y'all's high school prom? Okay, most of y'all, right? How many of y'all went to y'all's high school prom with somebody you really didn't want to go with, but the person you really wanted to go with didn't ask you? Y'all ain't gonna volunteer it yet, but some of y'all honest enough. It was more important for you to be at that prom than to miss it, right? So you said to that person that showed up at your door, oh, come on. Right? That's what we might have to do next Tuesday. Oh, Hillary. Okay? She's what's known as a bridge. Sometimes you have to cross a bridge to get to where you want to get. Ain't nobody say you got to stay on that bridge. Okay? But the alternative is to go backwards and take the long way around. And clearly one candidate is trying to take us backwards and forcing another generation of folk to take the long way around. Many of you, I know because I talk to my students, so I know your mindset. I ask many of you, how many of you believe there's racism? No hands go up. You know, how many of you believe there is no racism? You know, half the hands go up. This thesis of racism has not been your cultural reality. You didn't grow up in the segregation era. We might as well be talking about the stagecoach era. We might as well be talking about the 1900s when we talk about 50 years ago. Hell, some of y'all weren't even born in the 80s. Can't relate to it. Okay? Can't relate to it. A lot of my students have a real problem relating to the Panther Party because they have taken the dominant society's historical construct of the Panther Party, where they have represented it as something that was evil. When the Panther Party was really the response to the assassination of Malcolm, and then the Panther Party mushroomed after the assassination of King. Young folks said, oh, okay, you killed Malcolm, because Malcolm foresaw them coming. He called them the prophets of rage. He said, there will be a generation that won't be taking these lickings. But then when they killed King, young folks said, hey, we ain't got nothing to lose. The Panther Party grew from about 3 chapters to 150 chapters. You guys need to investigate this 50th anniversary of the Panther Party this year. I think Bobby Seale is having something this month. Okay? Because what they did, the name of the party was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Okay? California was once an open carry state. You could carry a gun in public as long as it was unloaded. So they took their guns out in public and policed the streets of Oakland. And then, to try to force the California legislature to deal with police brutality, they stormed the state capitol one day with rifles, walked on the assembly floor with rifles. This was when Ronald Reagan was governor. The next day, the California legislature banned open carry in California. Okay? So all they was doing was using the law the same way many of these gun lobby and constructionist folk use the law to demand their Second Amendment protection rights. The free lunch program, the free breakfast program that is in every school and every senior citizen center in America was a demonstration project of the Black Panther Party. Free clinics that were put into effect under Richard Nixon in the 1970s was a demonstration program of the Panther Party. After school care, the elimination of latchkey children, where you guys could stay after school and play on the playground until your parents picked you up. That was a demonstration program of the Panther Party. The Panther Party changed America's social policy in a way that you can't point to any organization outside of the NAACP changing the law with respect to Brown. And so, conflict in politics and cultural society means that you can't lose focus of what we're trying to do. We may have to tolerate a president that we don't necessarily like to get to where we need to get to. That's going to be your charge. It's a conflict for you to vote for somebody because you guys love and you love deep and you love hard and y'all hate hard too. Okay? I mean, y'all, you hate the establishment. Yeah, we hated the establishment too. You know. And you ain't gonna give, you would rather bury your vote than give it to somebody who you don't think appreciates it. I get that. Okay? But voting is a responsibility that people died for. Okay? You can't treat voting like you treat a pair of shoes when you decide you don't want to wear them anymore. You just throw them in the closet. You still got them, but you wear them when you feel like it. Okay? Our cultural reality today is that America is not what it was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, America was a bifocal society. Bifocal meaning everything was in black and white. Today, we are a multifocal society, meaning everything is in living color. Okay, California is the only state that has 4 minorities that represent 10% of the population. Whites, Latinos, blacks, and Asians. Okay, and Armenians and Indians are pushing up hard. We competed in a national economy. You guys are competing in a global economy. And so what has bound you together is that the art form that many of your parents created, which is hip hop, because hip hop is only a 40-year phenomenon, that people called a side genre when it first came out, a fad, is now the dominant music that we listen to. They make commercials now, getting you to buy products selling hip hop, cars, insurance. You see seniors rapping. You do. Okay? But that is what has bridged, music is what has bridged the race divide globally. I had an international student, her name was Si-Fong Lee, in the spring. She took my African American Studies class, African American Studies 5, which was, Reconstruction to Contemporary. By the 6th week of school, the first day of class, she barely talked, head down, wearing a white blouse, short black skirt, the typical uniform of the Chinese student. By the 6th week of school, she was wearing sagging jeans, a baseball jersey, and her hat. I said, Si-Fong, how long you been in there? She said, 6 weeks. I said, hip hop that turned you out in 6 weeks? Okay. The second chapter, and I'm going to wrap in a minute. No, I mean wrap up. The second chapter of my last book, Realize Race, Reality, and Politics in 21st Century Popular Culture, is called America's Cultural Identity Crisis. What it's really called, I ain't trying to offend nobody, what it's really called is America's Unbelievable Cultural Identity Crisis. And the thesis of that chapter is they want to be you and you want to be them. You don't know how badly they want to be you. To sit yourself in a tanning parlor to where you damn near scorched, you got to work to get orange like Donald Trump. I mean, that is not a natural color. Y'all do know that, right? You got to work for that. There are people that are paying thousands of dollars to get lips injections, to have lips like y'all. Okay? There are people paying thousands more dollars. The big thing when we was coming up was breast implants. The big thing when y'all coming up is butt implants. People are paying thousands of dollars to get y'all's kadonk. They want to be you, but you want to be them.
Not anymore.
That's the cultural reality. And so you got to remain true to yourself, but you can't let them take over the nation in the process. And so if you call yourself conscious, then you got to be strategic. You know how y'all strategic with y'all's boyfriend and y'all's girlfriend? When y'all gonna break up with them, you don't do it all of a sudden. You hold it for the right time. Wait for a fight to jump off. How many of y'all know when your significant other is trying to break up with you? They be trying to start some shit, right? Trying to start an argument. You can tell when they picking at you. Be like, no, I ain't falling for it. She gonna have to hang in there a little longer. She gonna have to leave because I ain't leaving. Right? Well, that's what they're trying to do, is get y'all to leave. They're trying to get y'all to leave. And some of y'all gonna walk away, and that's just gonna hand them the country. And don't think for a second that Donald Trump is not gonna do what he says he's gonna do. He intends to do it. The question is, can we make Hillary do what we want her to do? Because her justification for us voting for her is, well, you don't vote for me, this is what you're going to get. That's like telling the ugly kid on the playground, you might as well be my boyfriend. Don't nobody else want you. Donald Trump actually said that. He said, what do y'all have to lose? Don't nobody wants y'all anyway. I mean, just talking crazy to us. You know? Don't internalize that. Be strategic. Like the folk in the previous battles. Okay? They had to learn. I'll close with this point. 60 years of the 19th century, it took 60 years to deconstruct slavery. At the turn of the century, they tried slave revolts. Gabriel Prosser, Denmark, Vesey. Okay? Then they batted down, quit manumissions, those types of things. Then David Walker's appeal came out in 1829, and then Nat Turner occurs in 1831. But between 1830 and 1850 was the largest slave escape period in the history of America. America won't even tell you the truth, how many people walked off plantations. Because David Walker's appeal essentially told them the only reason slavery persists is because you allow it. And so, in order to try to curtail slave escapes through the Underground Railroad, they held California out of the Union until they passed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which said that you could no longer just escape to the north, now you had to escape out of the country. Okay? And allowed you to prosecute Northerners who did not aid in the recapture of slaves. And so the North, who was by and large indifferent to slavery and was able to tolerate slavery as long as it stayed in the South, then began to turn anti-slavery. And within 10 years, they were able to elect an anti-slavery president, at which time 9 states seceded from the Union the day after Lincoln was elected. Okay? And then the Civil War comes about. Now, do not allow those who have been frustrated with the process of us walking away from white males. Okay? Because that's what y'all did. Y'all was like, well, that's more of the same. We're going to give a brother a shot. Okay? Now it's time to give a woman a shot. We done seen what they could do. They believe in making money. And how do they make money? They create wars and they create economic bubbles that are merely derivatives of air. That's really what it is. Okay? Do not become so frustrated that you make the mistake of those who engaged in slave revolts at the beginning and try to fight the system as opposed to make the system comply to your presence or your absence. Okay? Because this election is going to hinge on you guys, because you don't show up in the polls. You know, they poll frequent voters. Sometimes they will oppose occasional voters, but they never poll never voters. And you guys won't vote, even if you have nothing else to do. You'd rather watch a rerun on television than get up and go vote. Okay? And so let them think y'all sleeping. Young folk ain't gonna turn out. Barack is not on the ballot. And it just surprised the shit out of them Tuesday. Just show up out of nowhere. Make them say, where the hell all these young people come from? Okay? You don't have to be enthusiastic about it. Okay? But at the end of the day, the next 20 years, the Supreme Court that's going to be set the next 20 years, that's going to have a dramatic impact on your life. We're going to be old. We're just going to be sitting back being like, damn. Okay? Y'all the one that's going to have to fight that fight. And so again, I thank you guys for inviting me here today. Hopefully I painted a picture of what conflict and politics looks like in a cultural reality. And you guys are the ones that are going to change the world. You're the change you're waiting on. So you guys watch very closely what's going on and then act as you think you need to act. Thank you very much.
Let's give Dr. Samad a round of applause.